Hello and welcome to West Wales and welcome to episode 4 of the Rare Breed Spin-Along, and this week's breed is the Hill Radnor. So we're in Wales and so we're spinning a Welsh breed, why not? And the Hill Radnor is another mountain breed. It's another breed I've never spun before, so I was really interested to see how it spun up. So a little bit of history, then I'm going to spin, then I thought we would ply together. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to just compare the 4 different breeds that we've spun in the first 4 episodes and see how they look together. If it's your first time here, lovely to have you along, and you know how YouTube works. It would be fantastic if you would consider subscribing to the channel. Okay, so all those bits done, let's talk about this breed. So today I'm spinning up comb top, and there it is. So let's just pull out some staples, see how long it is. And there we go. So it's got a light crimp and medium length of staple, and it is what is known as a medium fibre, meaning the thickness of each individual fibre would be classed as medium. And historically, it comes from the old county of Radnorshire, which is now incorporated into Powys. And if you want to think of a town that is sort of in that area, then Brecon is probably kind of the heart of where the old Radnorshire Hill sheep would have been, in and around that area. It's been established for about sort of 150 years, maybe a bit more, but the Breed Society only registered in 1949. So it probably was about for a long time and in that area, and it's probably kind of the result of selective breeding of the Welsh mountain sheep. The breed has a reputation of being relatively easy to handle, not kind of wild, like the Welsh mountain can be a little bit wild, and it has a good reputation as an easy sheep for young handlers to show in the show ring. If you really want to see fantastic sheep shows, then Bilthwells, they have the National Sheep Show at the Bilthwells Showground, and also the Royal Welsh Show is there. And I have to say, over my years, I have been to a lot of agricultural shows. I was brought up in the countryside. The Bilthwells Royal Welsh Show is absolutely my favourite show on earth. It is just a fantastic show. I think is it 4 days, 3 days, 4 days? 4 days, I think it is. And it's in July normally. And yeah, it's a great place. And you can see lots of really top quality sheep breeds. You can kind of look at the breed. Quite often they'll have fleece on display, so you can really examine the different fleece. And it is just a fabulous place and a great day out. Okay, enough of the advert for the Royal Welsh Show. So for the hand spinner, quite a dense sort of fleece, very low in kemp. I think Welsh breeds quite often have the reputation that they're going to be kempy, quite hairy. And I think that's true of the true kind of living up in the mountains, wild Welsh mountain sheep. I think they are quite kempy. But these breeds that are kind of more selectively bred, not quite as feral, they're quite low in kemp. I was quite delighted actually to see how little kemp there was in this, because I was thinking, oh, it might be a bit hairy, which is what I've thought about quite a lot of these mountain breeds. I was thinking, no, they're just going to be hairy, they're going to be full of kemp, and they're just not. So that has been another really nice thing to find with this breed. So as for spinning it, I split down my roving into thin, manageable sections. I want quite a consistent yarn, and I just find that splitting my rovings down or my top down is the best way to achieve it. I'm also spinning short forward draw, which is my default spin. The dog has just started making noises because she knows I'm recording a video. I'll be back in a minute. Millie was saving us from a squirrel, so we've been saved, and she was also guarding the bird's peanuts because the squirrel is trying to get into the peanuts. Despite the fact that we have one of those squirrel-proof bird feeders, it still tries. And Millie is very cross when it does, so she's just been telling it off. never mind about squirrels. So short forward draw, and I've changed the camera angle slightly, so I hope you can still see what I'm doing. So my thoughts on this were that it was very buttery to spin. It really felt like it kind of glided quite nicely. I was not having to fight it. Sometimes you can get some of these mountain breeds and they can be a bit toothy, I think is the word I want to use. But it was really a nice spin, and I just sat there in front of the fire and just enjoyed myself. And I reckon it took me about half an hour to spin one single, which was 25 grams, which is just under an ounce. One of the things I've been thinking about recently, and what I wanted to talk about in this video, is the idea of, do we as fibre artists need a signature style? The way I pay my bills is through designing stationery and particular invitations, and I would say I have a signature style to what my invitations look like. So if you looked at my invitations against somebody else's, you would know which ones I had designed. And quite often artists are told that they need to have a signature style. So I was just pondering, is that something we need to consider as fibre artists? And I think I have a default spin, and I think a lot of us have default spins. So I did ask the question on my Instagram, and it was very thought-provoking for people. So I was just wondering what your thoughts are on that. Do you need to spin in a certain way so that if someone sees your work, they know it's your work? So I really would love to know what your thoughts are on that subject. I would say my style has always been very much making knitting yarns, because that's where I came to spinning from. So I was a knitter first, and then I was a hand spinner. But as I've started exploring weaving, so my interest has changed slightly, and I'm now looking at wanting to produce art yarns. I was never that interested in art yarns. I could really appreciate them and I loved what other people were doing, but it was not something that particularly interested me. I was very interested in colour blending and the way to use colour within a hand spun yarn, but I was not that interested in textures and additions, and I played with it a little bit, but not something that I really did. And you'll notice a lot of my spinning is just very simple, straightforward worsted style spinning, because that's what I like to knit with. So as somebody who also paints and draws, I keep a sketchbook, and in my sketchbooks I use all different materials. I do mixed media, I do acrylics, watercolour, pencil, lino print, you name it. I just go wild and experiment and have a lovely time. But I'm less like that with my spinning. So I think really maybe for myself I should be exploring a little bit more the different techniques and effectively keeping a sketchbook of different yarns. I would love to know your thoughts, so please drop them in the comments below. So the next thing to do is ply, and there you go, they're my two singles. And I don't have a break on this. I don't find it particularly difficult. Some people actually rig up a little break, and you can actually kind of make these really easily just with a shoebox and a couple of skewers, and put a break on it with a bit of fishing line, if you so desire, if you need a good value way of making, what are these called? Lazy Kates. There you go. I'd forgotten the name for the moment. Could you tell? Because I was searching for it. How do I forget that? Honestly. Right, so that's what I thought we'd do. You may or may not have noticed that there are no mid-roll adverts in these spin-along videos. In my other videos, I try to keep the mid-roll ads to a maximum of 2. Some of the older videos probably do have more adverts on there. It took me quite a long time to work out how to take the adverts off. And if you go onto YouTube and ask kind of YouTube, how do you do YouTube? They'll tell you how to make money on YouTube. They don't actually tell you how to remove the ads. So it took me ages to work it out. Anyway, I digress. Right, so there are no adverts. So what I am going to ask that you do instead is join my newsletter. And my newsletter comes out, I'd like to say weekly, but it generally is bi-weekly because, you know, this is my hobby, as I keep telling everybody. It is not my business. And every 2 weeks-ish, I write a newsletter which contains some tips and some thoughts on hand spinning, natural dyeing, and kind of using fibre for making textiles. So with that little advert over, and I will put a link in the description below for that, let's get on with plying up this yarn. So if you're a new spinner, then you spin your singles clockwise and you ply anti-clockwise. So I get very confused by S and Z, which is how people normally refer to it. I never know which is which. Maybe that's because I'm dyslexic, I don't know. But anyway, I can remember clockwise for singles, anti-clockwise for plying. And this is just a simple 2-ply. If I was a more technical spinner, then I would get a protractor out and actually measure the angle of my ply. But I'm not, so I'm not. But there's no reason why you can't do that. I mean, just because I don't do it doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it. In fact, if you want to make consistent yarns that you're going to use in knitting, it's probably quite a good idea to do it. But, you know, I don't. So, hey-ho. Anyway, I thought I would also talk to you about a couple of resources. So, the book that I quite often refer to, and I have been using for some of the research for this series, and the dog has started barking again, so we might have to stop. I think Andrew's going to try and placate her. It's because of the squirrels. The squirrels are really hungry, so they're coming to the bird feeder. Oh, Millie, please stop barking. Anyway, right, so yes, he is letting her out to harass the squirrels. Not that she gets anywhere close to them, because squirrels are quite nasty, and I mean, they don't mean to, they're wild animals, but they will defend their quarter. And she has a tiny dog brain, so she just sees something moving and furry and, you know, wants to try and get it. Might have to come and bring her in a minute. Right, what was I talking about? Yes, so some resources. The book I've been using is In Sheep's Clothing, A Hand Spinner's Guide to Wool, and it is widely available. I still haven't worked out quite how to put links in without them being Amazon links, so I would just leave the details of the book and authors in the description so that you can make the choice as to where you want to buy your books from. So I try not to ply too quickly. If I do that, I tend to put a bit too much twist in. I know that sounds a bit mad, but sometimes I can find myself trying to finish a project, and I will kind of do this, spin like this, and then I just kind of make a mess of my, and just, you know, just slow the treadle down. This is what I have to tell myself sometimes. Just slow down, take it steady. No one's in any hurry. Oh, okay, and that's just a little bit of hay or grass or something, so we'll take that out. And you can just stop. So what I do if I'm stopping, I just do that so that I keep the two plies separately. Now obviously I can do that because this is an Ashford traditional and they've got these little handy doobrys here that I've forgotten the name of. I don't know if you can do that on a different style. Anyway, that's what I do if I need to stop and go and kind of sort dogs out or whatever I have to sort out. Okay, so I'm just moving along quite steadily and just smoothing this along. It's all very relaxed. If anybody has any top tips that they find helpful when they are plying, please feel free to put them in the comments, As I've said many times before, this channel is not about me being the world's best spinner, because I most definitely am not. This is about sharing a passion and encouraging people to just have a go at hand spinning, because I think it's a really fabulous hobby. Some people make a living out of it, and some people just enjoy it as something, as a hobby, and I'm in that category. It's just my hobby. I don't teach it professionally. I have no plans to start a course or, you know, anything like that. It just is for the fun of it. Because, as I've said many times, and I will say it again, YouTube is not how I make my money. I do not pay my bills through the advertising on YouTube. I don't quite know who does, but it isn't me, that's for sure. But it does help pay for the rovings, and it means that I'm not kind of worrying about spending the housekeeping money on editing software and the music that I use in some of the videos. So it is, I really appreciate it if you do actually kind of watch the adverts at the beginning and end, but I understand it's fine to skip over them as well, because, as I said, just a hobby. Another good resource is the Rare Breed Survival Trust. They've got good information on all of the breeds. The other place you can look is the breed societies. Generally, all these specific breeds have breed societies. They have websites, and you should be able to get good information on the breeds. They're not specifically aimed at hand spinners. They are much more aimed at farmers, but there's still some good information on there, because a good fleece is an important part of any sheep. When, you know, particularly if people are showing their sheep, then the fleece is an important part of that showing process. Okay, well, I'm just going to carry on with this and finish this yarn, and I will come back to you when it's finished and dried, and then we can look at it against the 3 other yarns that I've spun in this series. So here are the 4 yarns that I have spun in the first part of the Rare Breed Spin Along. You're going to have to excuse the sound of the rain on the roof of the conservatory. I've been trying to wait until it's not raining, and you know, that's just never going to happen today. So we started off with the Manx Lotan, then the Lonk, Whiteface Woodland, and then the Radnor. So quite different, all of them, and some more different than others. I'm going to rank them in my least favourite first. This I found a bit tricky to spin, the Manx Lotan. I'm sure I would get used to it, and I saw somebody describe it as toothy on Instagram. Yes, had a bit of a bite to it. I was struggling with it a little bit, but as I said, I'm sure I'd get used to it. However, it might have been my least favourite to spin, but it's my favourite the way it looks. It's just, oh, lovely, lovely, lovely colour. Then next one, really difficult, because I liked spinning all of these 3. I think Lonk was the favourite to spin, and you can just see the difference in the colours of these 3, even though they are essentially just undyed white sheep. You've got that little bit of grey running through. I mean, ignore the green that it's tied up with, but it's got that little bit of grey running through, the little grey fibres, and it gives it a bit of a bluey sheen to it. I think there's less crimp in this one. Yeah, and I think that was my favourite to spin. Followed by the Hill Radnor. I thought that was really buttery, really nice. And then the White-Faced Woodland. But to be honest, not a lot between them. So very difficult to say. Now, the way they look, I I think so. For the out of these three, because obviously this looks, it's coloured wool. It looks the way it looks. Out of these three, I think the Hill Radnor. I think, but as I said, really, really close. So I'd love to know how you've got on. What's been your favourite spins so far? And next spin along, which will be in 2 weeks' time, if you're watching this in real time, will be Fournier. So until then, may your yarns be soft and your needles be swift.